Hello again. Let's look at the audio side of the audio-visual setup. This is my Intellijel 7U performance case. I had this case and then I sold it. I went to an Amalgamod 14 RU double behemoth. Amazing case. It was too much. It was too much for my little mind. So I did a massive downscale. I got my old case back and sold the new case to the same guy that bought this case. So that kind of worked out well. It was a lesson in, my eyes being too big for my belly, and instead have condensed this down into a tidy little noise-making, beat-making, drone-making machine that I really love and I'm having lots and lots of fun with at the moment. And also, it's kind of quite simple. I mean, I love my Electron stuff, I love the Deluge, I like Ableton Live, I like having complex sequences. What the Amalgamod case gave me was the opportunity to look at the vector sequencer by 512, I think it is. And I had that in there, and that was an amazing sequencer, but again, probably more than what I needed. The only sequencing that I have in this case is Pamelas New Workout. So just using individual channels to be able to do different basic, either regular patterns with randomness added in, so random skip steps in, or using Euclidean sequencing inside here and letting that go. If you've watched the video or any of my videos, I kind of put this genre mashup of ritual, drone, industrial, slow-mo, techno stuff. And that's just the space that I really like creating sounds in. Using this stuff is totally sound design for me. Tweaking things, trying to get things to sit together, but then being able to make these super dense layers of sound that you can listen through. And I think it's the same around the visuals, the visual aspects that I create, in terms of you can look through them. There's a surface layer, and then you can kind of go through to the next layer and through to the next layer, and you can let your focus kind of shift through that. And that's the same approach that I do with my sound. And so something like this is a really good step away from something like the Electron workflow or the Deluge workflow, where it's really locked into that sequencing and complex sequencing. So this is kind of cool because I can use the 1010 Eurorack Bluebox, which is my mixer. I can also use it as my main clock and have it clock Pamelas New Workout. So I've got a play button down here, and when I hit that, that'll start sending clock, and Pamelas will start triggering and sending things out. So let's just keep talking about that for a second around how I've got that set up. With this, the thing that I've been really enjoying is layering instruments over the top of each other with single notes, but then being able to split those instruments off into a second sequence quite easily. And so what I have going on is down here on channel 8, I've got this going up to the X value of this XY1U module from Intellijel, which is connected in the background to this switched mult. So this lets me do a few different things. The kick that's coming out of channel 8 is not only multed that I can select where these outputs go. The first thing that it does is there's a number of sidechain points in the system. So these go out to the cockpit. So there's a sidechain option here on the cockpit. There's a sidechain option down here on the Ghost. And where's the other sidechain going again? Yeah, no, what I've got is I've got this actually triggering another envelope happening. And so with that, I can kind of submix what I'm using for percussion up here in the cockpit and use the sidechain for that. And then any kind of dense drone elements that I'm using the Ghost for with, you know, distortion, delay, reverb, and filtering, I can also implement a sidechain on that thing as well. Okay, so the other sequence that I've got going out here is kind of like my hi-hat sequence. So it's something that would give me a feel of a hi-hat or a pulse, sometimes at speed or at double speed of whatever my sequence is running at. And that'll allow me to do things like, for example, use the Manus as a hi-hat. And we'll kick into some listening of this in a minute. But that's my basic kind of sequencing. Everything else, all of these other ones can be little extra triggers for places or sending out sync sources to like the Oneiroi, which needs a fairly slow sync in to be able to make the delays and the modulation all kind of sync up. You can't send full speed clock to it. It needs to be a slower sequence. So I can have that going out of there. And then just some other kind of modulation options that's going from there. So let's just have a quick look and I'll demonstrate that sequencing and then we'll get into the sort of sound design for each of the modules. The only other thing that I wanted to mention was over here I've got the Novation launch control connected via USB-C into the Bluebox. And I've got all the faders mapped. I've got all of the pan options and the send A to the delay and send B to the reverb that are built into the Bluebox in here. And it's so cool to have send effects built into this module because previously I had, you know, reverbs and delays, some of the kind of qubit effects, some of the noise engineering effects all in here, and I kind of don't have to. I've got the Ghost that's sitting in here. I've got some distortion options, but pretty much I can do everything at the mixer point. And this is another nice thing, and it's kind of reminiscent of the Electron style of doing things, that having a master delay and reverb allows all of the sounds to be glued together and put together into some sort of kind of coherent mix. And then it is nice having the Ghost because this becomes a separate option for processing, you know, one of these other modules, although the Oneiroi has got amazing effects built in and the VHIKK-X has also got dungeon reverb. It was like those two words when they announced this module for pre-order, you know, and dungeon reverb. I'm like, okay, I have to buy that module. That's going to be mine. All right, so I've got this. So I'll just start with channel 1 with the kick. And if I press play, we've got that going on. Like, I'm using the Kickain from Knobula and absolutely love this module. I should be using the sidechain for stuff, but I'm really interested in quite just like letting things smush, and then I've got sidechain set up on these other units to be able to let that happen. But yeah, these are the kicks that I just love, these kind of big, boomy, long decay It's got its own built-in reverb, so I don't need to mix on the mixer with anything. And the reverb's really kind of interesting because it's kind of like a short tail and just adds another element to it. And I've gone right down the techno rumble rabbit hole, and so I know that this isn't necessarily good for a club sort of sound system, but that's not where I'm going for this. But if I was going to be doing sort of techno rumbles, the Kickain and the Ghost combination and using the inbuilt sidechain stuff is absolutely stonkingly amazing. So here we go, 42 BPM. I've got a Euclidean set up on this on 8. So it's just coming in as a gate. I've got 16 steps with 7 triggers, 42 BPM. We're totally in doom kind of ambient territory happening with that. So then what I'm able to do here with these other switches, this one is going into the Pamelas Iteritas, that is working as my hi-hat drone extra kind of layer. So if I kind of kick this up to along to K on here and then flick this up to the kick, and I've got to bring layer 2 in, I can layer it. Whole heap of modulation going on into Pamelas. So the main modulation that I've got, if it's not coming from Pamelas Workout and I've got kind of random slewed stuff coming out of here, then the DivKid Oct is doing the rest of the modulation. And it's true, the marketing is true. This really kind of lets your modular breathe, that you can have kind of related but different modulation options going right the way through your whole system. So it creates this kind of other layer, and it's down low and slow, and so things are just kind of modulating over a long amount of time. So kicks going on. The Pamelas can be that layer, but then I can also do this. So this is a lot of fun. So simply just with a flick of a switch, I can either mute that module if it's in the center, I can have it going in time with the kick, or I can have, you know, kind of skittery hi-hats, other percussion stuff coming from that. So the other elements that I'm submixing up into the cockpit are the Atom. So this is Mutable Instruments Elements clone. And love, hate, more love. What it does is it really forces me to get into the module and find some sweet spots, some things that are kind of happening that I really kind of like. And also you can kind of radically shift things just with a couple of small manipulations, like the geometry and the brightness, changing the dampening. Having built-in reverb is amazing. and then obviously fiddling with the timbre of it. So let's sequence that with the kick. And I've got a little bit of modulation coming into the bright, so it'll just kind of gradually change over time. So it just keeps it evolving and changing. You know, if you made it through the 14 minutes of that clip that I did yesterday, you know, I'm trying to keep you interested by connecting with the sound and listening to the changes over time. And then also just kind of, you know, tweaking it as I go, and changing elements. And so here we go, there's 2 layers. And then let's love-hate with this thing too. There's so many different kind of permutations of it to be able to work through, and it's fun having these extra sort of modulations going in here. So even though I'm changing stuff on the fly and tweaking it, it's still always kind of finding these surprising moments. Being able to just kind of swap the modes and then also just jump octave ranges is amazing too. Yeah, I like that rattle. Listen to that. Saw mod's crazy. It kind of pitches it up, so just trying to find those different frequency layers through the sound, because one of the things that I'm not really doing with my kick is having something like a click or a lot of punch or a lot of bend. It's just definitely keeping it in that really low, heavily filtered space. Something just, it's triggering by itself. And so letting these other layers be able to create that, the same way that, you know, those crazy kids will, you know, layer the transient and then the tail and then the body of the kick with samples. It's exactly that same sort of process. All right, I've got one more thing just on this submix going up into the cockpit and into the Golden Master, and that is the knit, which is the Plaits mini version clone of it, and I've got it set in the orange. I think this is an FM, but this is just doing something really weird, and even though I have the internal envelope set down really, really low, it's doing something quite weird. So let's just have a listen to it layered with the kick. So again, I've got it up here. I can trigger it between having pulses, because this thing will also run as my baseline every now and then. And the outputs, I've got it running into the Terci Ruiner. So these 2 levels, these first 2 distortion models as stereo. So I know the models are different, but it just creates a bit of a different texture between the left and right outputs. And again, this is coming up in here, and I've got that opportunity for side chaining if it gets too sort of hectic. Maybe we should just mute the kick, and then we can just have a listen to this for a second. And I've got modulation going into the timbre and morph. So this thing again will just change over time. So see, there you go. Like what is that, and where does that go? Like I don't know what's happening. Why is that ringing out now? I'm sure if I read the manual, I would understand it. But what an amazing module just to have a plethora of different sounds across 3 different banks. And then when you get into the FM, like the DX7 stuff, you've got multiples sitting in through the harmonic layers, but still an option to be able to kind of tweak the morph and the timbre on the fly, even though they are being modulated. And then with the kick, and then let's listen to it as a bass line, taking that same sort of sequence that was sequencing the hi-hats. And being able to have the side chain, so you can still let the kick kind of come through, and then this increases the tail or the depth of the side chain. So much goodness. And I do like also that with the Manus, if you turn the envelope all the way clockwise, it'll drone. And so you can then just kind of have fun playing with that. And I do have some sound effects on that channel. In fact, looking at that on the Novation at the moment, I'm pretty sure I've got that reverb cranked up pretty high and a bit of delay that's happening too. Just to add to the soup, the sonic soup. Okay, what's next? Oh, okay, let's jump to scan as the next layer of sound that's going on. If you don't know what this is, scanned synthesis. Imagine a whole bunch of different sound objects pinned together in space, held together by a cable, and you've got a big hammer and you can whack the end. I like to think of them as like tin cans of sound all joined together with string, and you hit one and it'll kind of, the movement will travel down all of them. You can set the mass of the tin cans, you can choose the center point as to you hitting it, so you're getting more of a symmetrical outcome. You can choose the stiffness of the strings in between the tin cans. You can dampen it so, you know, don't get out of control cans or get really out of control cans. You can change the waveform and the strength of how hard you're hitting it and the update rate as well. These two get me a bit perplexed. Not exactly sure how they affect the sound. They do affect the sound, and they do affect the sound a lot. But without an oscilloscope, I can't get into it. So I'll just show you what I do with this. So I'm going to mute channel 2, or have the kick in and out, every now and then. This is being sequenced separately, so it comes in every now and then, but if we wait too long for it to be sequenced, I'll just push the little button down here to trigger it. So, oh yeah, no, that's working okay. I just need to work out why. Oh, maybe if I turn it up here. Okay. So, signal path for this guy is it's going into the endorphins filter. What do they call that? Why can't I see its name anywhere? And this is going into a resonator. So all of these are different sort of patches. You can go through a whole bunch of different modes. And this is going through a resonator because I've got another filter at the ghost level. So this is coming out and then it's going into the ghost, which has got delay and reverb. And then I'm also got a bit of delay, well I've actually got a lot of delay and reverb sends going on in there, just for extra reverb and delay, because you can never have enough. And then I've got the black joystick too, just outputs that are controlling the cutoff and the resonance of the resonator mode on this. So at the moment with the dampening down and the mass down, you can see that when it gets a trigger, not much kind of happens. It just kind of stops and the envelope drops and you get a little bit of kind of randomness. But if I increase the mass and reduce the dampening and we get a trigger, shall I just push the button? I'll just push the button. This is now going to go for a bit. And I can kind of play with the stiffness. But the different layers of harmonics that's kind of going on through that, and then having the joystick connected to the resonator. Let's have a listen. Lovely, absolutely lovely. Such a beautiful module. Thank you, Qubit, for implementing scan synthesis in a module. The final thing is I've just got the shape being modulated as well. And it's nice because you can kind of control that. If I increase the dampening and reduce the mass, I know it's just going to kind of lose out and drop out until it gets kind of sequenced again. Okay, two more things. The VHIKK-X, I have this in envelope mode. I can't tell you which model it's in, except it's number 4. So there's 9, these are 3-way switches. You can flip between different things. I've got some modulation going into the warp and the span, and I think the morph as well. It's just coming stereo out. It's coming into its own channel, which is channel 4. And it's just kind of being triggered every now and then. So I need to press play. And I don't know, you probably can't see, I've just got the 2 HP envelope generator triggering the envelope. Let's bring up the low pass filter. So some extra things that's kind of I like playing with in here is the feedback. So this is the mix side of things, where this will take whatever sort of effect is part of this model and then start feeding it back, and that'll start building up over time. That's a lot of fun. Playing with the warp and the span. Like, if you read the manual for this thing, it's really well explained as to what each of the different parameters do, but it's just so much fun in a hands-on way, feeding it some CV, high pass, low pass sort of DJ filter here to be able to control it, swapping models on the fly, and then all of these things impact those things differently. It's just fun in a box. Okay, that's that one. And then the last thing, really quickly, because oh my God, this is 31 minutes so far, is the Oneiroi. Still working through this. This has got some crazy sort of shift functions that need to happen with the button, especially around setting modder mounts and different models that's going on. But the thing that I'm just really loving this for is the super saw. And let's get some volume going on that. So just playing with the detune to just be able to get these big sort of massive rumbles, having the filter engaged, and this is being triggered by that envelope again, and then just having the different resonator, echo and ambient things, because these things will kind of almost feed back depending on the settings that you've got. So this feedback control for the resonator, changing the tune, it's a little sort of amazing noise box, and there's heaps of reviews on the web. And the other thing that I like is, if I'm not using the looper, it's just got this kind of white noise to be able to play through. And so that's lots of fun, playing with all of these things. Having the echo being able to be tempo synced just adds a whole heap of fun to it. Cool. That is it. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, you can jump over to that link. And thanks for being with me today, talking about this. This is the first kind of videos where I'm talking about stuff. Everything else has just been sit and watch it. So hope this helps. If you've got any questions about any of these modules, this has been a really 2 or 3 year curation of pulling together all of these different modules and having this at this configuration. And I think, please learn from me that sometimes less is more in terms of modular. It's so much nicer having a smaller case and working within a limited playground. Thanks for being here today. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, whatever that does, and stay tuned for more audio-visual kookiness. Bye.